Welcome back. You're still watching Daybreak on this 26th day of April 2022, a very important day, the second day of lying in state of the body of former President Kibaki, as Kenyans get an opportunity to pay their last respects. At this moment, the body is in the parliamentary buildings and, of course, being prepped for that process of Kenyans to get an opportunity to view it. And I'm here in studio with, let me just use this term because this is in order, Dr. Amos Kimunya, who is the Member of Parliament for Kipipiri and also Leader of Majority in the National Assembly. I have Governor Lee Kinyanjui from Nakuru, and now we're being joined by Dr. James Nyikal. He's the Member of Parliament for Seme constituency. He's a former Director of Medical Services and a former PS. And good morning, Daktari. Let me begin with asking you this question that I've also asked the guest in studio. How you met the president and what you will remember, especially in working with him during the time that he was president?
Well, when I first met the president, I was actually already the Director of Medical Services, and we were working on the malaria program, and we went to State House to brief him on what the malaria program was. Obviously, that's when I first met him closely. But before that, I knew he was a member of parliament. I knew he was a minister for health. Before, I knew he was a vice president. But to come close, that was the first time in State House when we were briefing on the malaria program. And what struck me was how relaxed he was and how he listened keenly and how he said very little. And at the end of the briefing, he asked questions that indicated to you that he had listened very carefully. He had actually internalized the issues you are addressing, and he was quite astute on the questions that he asked. Mm-hmm. So that's really my first encounter with him.
Right, and so what more will you remember, especially the lessons you picked up and how they influenced how you continued working with the government?
What I picked up from him, the lessons that I picked up in terms of governance is, one, he respected the professional opinion and he listened to it very carefully. Two, he delegated. And three, you are given a free hand to do what you wanted to do, so long as, one, you had a serious preparation of, if it's a project, the concept of the project, the planning of the project, the financial implications, the benefits that will accrue to the people and to the country. And once you did that, this would go in the form of cabinet memo. Mm-hmm. And if the cabinet memo was approved, then you'd come back and work. And I realized that once that was approved, once he was in agreement, then you had a free hand. And I don't remember, for the 8 years I was in government in senior position, any time that I got a call from State House directing me on what I should do, which would be contrary to what I professionally thought was right. On the contrary, whenever we met him, particularly as PSS, he gave you the impression, and it's true, that so long as you are right, so long as you know what you are doing, then go ahead and do it. I think that's really is what I remember most about his professionalism, his delegation, and his giving a free hand. And not only that, I also realized that if you did the right thing, you felt protected. He actually clearly, in my mind, put a clear line between politics and service delivery. And anytime you feel that there's going to be political interference, he would actually make a very quick and clear decision based on the facts that you have put down, the technical facts you put down. And you would almost feel that he's ignoring the political element and focusing on what is technically right and what is likely to deliver. I remember a number of instances that really demonstrated this very clearly.
Okay, all right. Dr. Nikal, stay on the line. We'll be engaging you as you continue this conversation. Dr. Kimunya, so tell me about, because I had this story when President Moi died, I spoke to one of the former assistant ministers and they told me about a situation that was in terms of property of the former president, and Governor Lee alludes to a bit of it. That time you're the Minister of Lands. What exactly was going on? What were the specific instructions?
When we started all this, reconsolidating all the public properties that had been, landed in private hands through the infamous land grabbing, it just didn't look at the land, it also looked at the government houses. And a study was done, a comprehensive listing was done and brought to us in the subcommittee of cabinet. And one of the properties that was listed on that was the Cabernet Gardens property. So we were very concerned. We said, now, how did this property end up being, listed in the former president's name? And
that is President Moi.
President Moi. So I, as Minister of Lands, then went and said, no, this one we need to consult. And I went to see President Kibaki and said, we don't want an embarrassing situation here, but one of the properties listed on this schedule is, is this Cabernet Gardens. And he said, no, hiyo ni yake. Alipatiwa na Mzee Kenyatta in 1972, or, something like that, huh? So that one you must remove, right? So then, so he said, so how did it end up in 1972? How come it's never been registered? Apparently what happened is now, in just the last few days of President Moi, the then Commissioner for Lands thought the best way to, correct the situation that he was allocated the land, the building, right? And, but it had never been transferred to him, was to give him the title. But unfortunately, the title was like, I, President Moi, give to President Moi the title for this land, because it was in the president's name. And we said, no, here, it doesn't look good. So even for posterity, that it will always be seen that he gave himself the title. So Kibaki said, just go and prepare a fresh title. I, the president, now will give it to him. The grant, the normal, the grandfather. And I went and spoke to President Moi, and he said, here is chukua your title. And he even said, my land, what Kenyatta gave me is up to here, right? These others, there was a bit that was excess from Royal Nairobi Golf Club to put up police houses and all that. He said, that is not mine. That hiyo ni ya serikali. So we then had to get the two titles. One to the treasury for the land that occupied by the police houses, and one for the land that was originally given to him. And then, it was done, and I took it to him. Because, it's like, let's be fair, don't just do some witch hunting because people want to say, Moi did ABCD. So he did that. And
so the legal regime in the presidencies of President Jomo Kenyatta and Daniel Moi allowed for such kind of...
No, the way the wording of the titles were, any grant of land, public land, government land, was in the president's name. So if the title would read, I, the president of Kenya, grant unto, so and so, to Lee Kinyanjui, the 1 acre in Nairobi. So now, when you see I, President Moi gives to President Moi, or to Dandia teacher of Moi, it doesn't look good. So he said, no, we do it nicely, but it's his. You cannot take away that. And that historical memory, institution memory in terms of how things were, what should have been done, is something he really had.
Did he himself, how much of benefit did he get from the presidency of Jomo Kenyatta, if you know? Not that, nothing in terms of that grant, because, President Moi was given that because it was the official residence of, and it was like he has lived there for so long. He should just continue being there. And but he himself,
I believe all the properties he had, there's a transaction in terms of how it was bought, like every other person on the, arm's length, but not as a beneficiary of those grants. Yeah.
Okay, and so, Governor Lee, how will the country remember President Kenyatta? Someone yesterday said that he was reform-oriented. How will the country remember him, especially in this specific area that Amos Kemunya was a minister in, the land sector, the reforms that came with it, and especially in areas that you represented in the Rift Valley?
Thank you. But also allow me to say something that I also consider to be very important, is that Kibaki strongly believed in us rising together, creating institutions that allowed people to move from one level to the other. And it's also good to say that a lot of times for some of us in public life, it is about me owning this hotel or that land or that industry. But he was more interested in how can we increase access to, the Africans for that matter. And therefore, there are very many institutions that were done when he was a finance minister, and many of them that also flourished even when he became minister, that also speak to supporting ladder institutions, institutions that people require to go to the next level. And I want to give an example, is like AFC, Agricultural Finance Corporation. So you have a lot of big farms, the Wazungus were living, and you didn't want this land now to be subdivided to everybody. Africans didn't have money. That's how a lot of the big lands, especially in the Rift Valley, came into being. So he was very instrumental in setting up institutions. And what is important, a country is run through institutions. If the institutions are weak, then likewise will not be able to make any progress. And in the education sector, there is one particular area that I really want to remember. Amos, you'll remember, back in the 80s and 90s, if you went to like Kampala, you would find like 30% of the students there were from Kenya. And interestingly, also lecturers were there. We had only like 3 universities: University of Nairobi, Kenyatta, and Moi, and Egerton. So just 4. So when Kibaki came and through Mudhaura, there was this issue: how do we do Harambes to take our children just across? And then they are going to be taught by an Ochieng and a Kamau there. So a lot of charters were given during Mwai Kibaki's time. So these Mount Kenya universities and all these other universities that you have seen opened up doors to education.
Right.
Before, if you were not officially like admitted to those universities, you either go to India or seek solutions out there. The number of students going to foreign countries now are purely for prestige and other reasons, but much of those issues have already been addressed. But back to reforms, I think President Kibaki understood the core of the nation. And I remember one day he was coming from out of the country, so myself and a few of the other MPs decided to go and wait for him at JKIA, just how are things going, tell him many things, the gossip of the day, who said this, what is happening there, what is happening here. So he listened, and the only question he asked, because Abdi Kadir was there, and Abdi Kadir was the MP from Mandera and also leading the constitutional review thing. All he wanted to know is who you anasema nini, because he was the face of this constitutional review. And he understood that in it, a lot of the land issues would be dealt with. You remember issues to do with land, issues to do with even elections and how you manage them, was all packaged within that. And there was a lot of back and forth. So he believed that the only way a nation can have stability and growth is having a stable structure. The infrastructure within which a country runs for stability purposes is, if it comes to land, your land is protected. If it comes to education, you ensure that it is running. And I think that was very important. So he believed in change. And I think also one area that he came and asked very basic questions that changed everything. You will remember prior to 2002, if we ever wanted anything, we looked west. If you wanted to buy a car, we looked west. If you were thinking of any solution that you couldn't find here, and that's why even very sick go to, London and those places. But Kibaki came and opened the East, not just in terms of infrastructure, but in terms of solutions. what options are there now that were not there. So again, today the world has changed. The solutions you find maybe in all those places are now actually, you find the influx of the Chinese, the investments. You will go to a place like Westlands and the biggest investment, the tallest GTC and all that, is actually by the Chinese. So again, that helped to stabilize the country in a very big way. So he knew what was necessary for the nation to get stability. And he also looked at not quick solutions, but the baseline, including changes in law that would help us to secure the future of the nation.
All right. Dr. James Nyikal, so you told me that he respected professionals and would listen. As long as you're on the right track, you'd be free to implement. But how was it working with, because yes, first Director of Medical Services, later PS, and you're working with assistant ministers and ministers who are politicians. How useful did you feel, especially interacting with the president, with that other layer of political leaders?
Extremely, I felt extremely useful, and I felt as a professional, I felt appreciated, because taking from just speaking from what Governor Leah said, he also respected structures. He expected you to put down structures. If you had a project you want to implement, you have come with the concept, you have come with the planning, the financial implications, and then the structures through which you will implement that. And so long as this was right, and he would actually, if you give details, if you give the detailed briefing, he would actually query even your structures. I remember one time when we were having problems, almost the same problems that we have with KEMSA now. And then I was saying, now there's no pilferage. We have put down structures that ensure that you will not lose drugs. He said, what exactly are those structures? What have you done in the stores? What have you done on the people who are receiving? He wanted that level of detail. So those structures, he would need them. And I remember on several occasions when my ministers had briefed him and a decision was to be made, I would be called. I remember being called to State House. For example, one time when we had the nurses strike, and the strike was actually illegal, it was declared illegal. The Minister for Labor confirmed it was illegal, and the nurses were instructed to go back, and they refused to go back. And the decision had been reached that all the nurses can be sacked and new ones can be employed. I was suddenly called to State House, and I said, I was asked, will this work? And I said, it will give us a problem, because when we remove all the people who have the experience, who guide others who come in specialized areas of care, then we'll have a problem, and we can actually lose people in the changeover period. He just quickly said, in that case, let's talk to them more. In another issue, again relating to that one of nurses, we increased the salary of nurses, we advertised, and very many nurses applied from the faith-based health institutions. And by the time we recruited, we were literally emptying the mission hospitals, and it became a crisis. All the bishops went to him, and they wanted to be given money to increase the salaries so that the nurses don't leave. We, on the other hand, had said, we will employ them, but we'll keep them in mission hospitals and consider that a grant to the mission hospital, because it would be useless to close those ones and crowd everybody then. He listened to the bishops. They were very passionate. They needed the money immediately. And then he asked me what my opinion was. He asked the doctor who came from the Catholic secretariat and the doctor that came from church. And we said, as doctors, we were agreed that so long as the nurses were there and they were paid from the ministry and that considered grant, it was okay. So he just said, if the doctors have agreed, why don't we let the doctors work? Na nyinyi muombe Mungu. That is how he valued technical opinion, so that you felt that the ministers would do the political work. Right. Because sometimes the general agreement on what should be done is to a large extent political, but the details and the structures through which it will be done is actually technical. And he would make a very clear distinction when the political work is over and the technical work is on, and then he would really support that. And then he also believed that if you put in a structure for delivery, you must also put in a structure for monitoring. And that is what brought us to the performance contracting. So you say, I'm going to do this time, with this amount of money. At the end of the year, you are assessed on whether you have done it and how far you have reached. And this was done publicly. It was also a very, very important concept that I really wish we should have continued with. And again, if you felt that your technical information didn't lead to the conclusion you had reached, he would actually tell you. For example, when we started social health insurance, many people do not know that this issue of universal health coverage actually started in Kenya. We did social health insurance. We wanted everybody insured so that we would have health care that is not paid for at the time of delivery by the person, but through insurance. And we presented to him. He asked a very simple question. There are a large number of Kenyans who are not able to pay the indigent. Who are going to pay for them? And we said, we expect the government to pay. What is the number? How much money it is? Then he said, no, that will not be possible at this time. We will let the economy grow. In the meantime, we'll give you money to improve the health infrastructure. And that's the first time probably we got the largest part of the budget. I think we went up to almost 11%, approaching the Abuja declaration that African heads of state had done earlier before he came into power, which was asking for 15%. And he said, use this to improve the infrastructure. As the economy improves and we can bring in more people, we'll then go through the social health insurance way. And it's actually that it was called the Ngilu Bill. When we made a presentation at the WHO, I think in 2005, April, and the whole world was so keen that you can cover everybody through a health insurance scheme, and we wanted it to be a resolution that every country should adopt a social health insurance scheme. But it was adopted, no, you cannot force people to take a particular line. Just say that everybody must make sure, every country must make sure their citizens are covered, and hence the universal health coverage. So but
Dr. Nyakal,
he gave so much freedom.
Yes, just before you go away from that point, then what explains how come that the Ngilu bill wasn't quite successful, and Charity Ngilu kept complaining that she had been defeated, with the president being said that he didn't offer the necessary support?
Well, actually, it was technical. I remember the presentation. It was a mid-morning presentation, and we did a full presentation. And I've told you what he asked. If we have to go through social health insurance, if the Ngilu bill as it is, what would it mean in terms of the amount of money needed to cover Kenyans who are not able, generally not able to pay? And when it was computed, he said, the economy cannot afford that. We can do it later. All the same, we went ahead and lobbied Parliament, and Parliament passed it despite what he had said. I think he declined to assent to it on the basis that he saw that technically it would not be financially possible. So it's not that he didn't support the bill. He said the timing of it and the economy at the time. In fact, it's what? If the economy keeps improving, we'll reach a point that our revenue will support the people who are indigents by paying for them through insurance. That led to another thing which came in his time, the social protection and social security, which we are talking about. We realized that there are people who need a protection, elderly persons, people with disability, orphans. And that time, there was a big issue of HIV/AIDS, and there was a large number of orphans that were actually living with elderly persons. So we actually visited Brazil, and we found that there was a huge social protection, giving money directly to people who needed it. And when we came back, I was actually called. Mr. Kinyua, now the head of the civil service, was the PS Finance, and President Uhuru, I think, was the Minister for Finance. And it was decided that in the ministry where I was, now I was in gender, we will be given 500 million shillings to start the cash transfer for elderly persons. Then the World Bank came in and said we can do cash transfer for orphans and vulnerable children. Then I think DFID came, we can also support elderly persons and then people with disability. But then he then said, okay, then we have to put in place a structure that puts all this social protection and social security together. And we actually had started, before he actually left, that we had started to have a meeting of all PSS that were dealing with social security. Mm-hmm. Even health insurance is a social security. Okay. Even school feeding program is a social security. Even farm inputs that you support farmers is a social security. So we wanted to put pension is a social security. And remember also it is during his time that we came with this RBA. So he always saw the bigger structure that will deliver, and then you build the institution with the structures, and then you monitor it, and you are tested at the end of it that have you achieved what you said you wanted to achieve.
Okay. Oh, all right.
I always remember that, and practical opinion was very, very respected.
All right, I hear you, Dr. Nyakal. Just stay with us. So, Dr. Kimanya, let me engage you on matters management of the country's economy. And here you are from East Park, quite experienced in your work. 2006, David Muraria steps aside, or he resigned? What exactly happened?
He resigned.
Yes, so now you have to steer the country. This is a time that the economy had been doing quite well, because I think the first or the second year of President Kibaki's tenure, you actually had excess in terms of revenue versus what you needed to spend. And then here you are, you have to now move the economy to the next level. What challenges did you have to deal with, and did it help of the long experience of President Kibaki in government and different departments?
I think the first thing, if we look at the period, by the time we were taking over, the economy was on its knees. Okay? The confidence levels were lowest in terms of the people of Kenya and also the international community. The Bretton Woods institutions had, washed their hands of Kenya. And when those wash their hands off, investors do the same. So the first thing that happened is, in terms of the first donor conference that happened in 2003, and President Kibaki co-chairing it at Safari Park, was trying to bring those people back and tell them, we have a new government, we have new plans, we are not like, the government has just left. We will fight corruption, we'll do all those things, and, bringing back confidence. And people started, pledging and supporting. And the stock exchange obviously started rising again, which is a sign of confidence. And hence, with now, and the level of optimism of Kenyans was at its highest. So people had now more confidence in terms of wanting to come back to Kenya and invest and help. But, wanting to and actually doing it are two different things. So 2003, we start growing again, 2004. Then by 2005, we are hit with the Anglo-leasing maneno. And I'm bringing that because that was a blot in the reforms that were taking place, and almost jeopardized our relations at the international level. And that's what actually forced, the late Muraria to resign. But the one thing that people forget, and we've talked about this many times, but it doesn't seem to stick, is when the Anglo-leasing matter was reported to President Kibaki, the first thing he said, have we lost any money? You have told me there's ABCD. Have we lost? Yes, we paid some deposit. I want that money back. Okay? I want that money back, and those contracts cancelled. And that happened. And it's all documented. We never lost a single shilling.
The money was brought back?
The money was actually paid back. So the issue became, who has brought it back? Because it had been wired, it was wired back. Now, he said, that can be traced by other people, but the money is back. So we have not lost anything. Now, the issue was, why did you guys allow yourself to be sucked into this? Because the Anglo-Leasing contracts started around about 1997. It's not 2004, 2003. They started in 1997. And there was a whole list of 18 contracts. 12 of them had already been executed between 1997 to about 2002. Then there are now extensions of some of those, phase 3, phase what, which is what we are now sucked in, the oceanographic survey vehicles and all that. And he said, no, I want a study on all these things, what has happened, why should we be paying for it, and first of all, freeze everything, okay? And we're frozen, and I remember I had even to cancel some of the promissory notes that had been issued, okay? So the challenge I had now when I took over the Ministry of Finance was to go back to the international community and tell them, the new president has come in, he's promised to fight corruption, and all of a sudden there's this big scam that has come. And convince them with facts, because the international community don't deal with the rumors of the day. It's not by reading papers or by listening, it's by where are the facts. And showed them, and we then re-engaged afresh. And Kenya was put back on track, and all the funds started flowing, okay? So it was very good, and then the economy started growing. So one of the things that helped is, A, that people had confidence in President Kibaki. They knew when he says something, it will be done, okay? He's not playing politics. He took action, and the money was returned. He also took action on the ministers who had been associated, that was Muraria, Murungaru, and were told, you know, I want your resignations, right? Because you've allowed my name to be tarnished on this matter. But, and things happened that way. Not that they were guilty, because there was no loss. Not that, you know, it's like I'm saying these are things that had been done from 1997. The technical people come and say we are doing an extension of this prisons reform, something else, you know, under the same 12 contracts. But that's the Anglo-Leasing, because I think people keep on talking about it and saying, oh, it killed the effort. Kenyans were very optimistic. Kenyans were arresting policemen, which is another thing that Kibaki said, no, look, hii maneno inaendelea. When people now start taking over the law into their own hands, this is very dangerous for the country. We need institutional framework for that. Can you bring the law on how to fight corruption? And we brought the Anti-Corruption and Ethics Act of 2003. This is how you're going to fight corruption. You're not going to fight corruption by getting citizens arresting policemen, right? Now that's people taking the law in their own hands. We're not going to start fighting land grabbing by everyone going back and repossessing what was taken. You know, you saw guys going to KICC wanting to take it back. Where is the institutional structure? Where is the legal mechanism for doing that? We started the Dungo Commission, right? So he always wanted, where is the legal framework for doing what you want to do? Don't just take it upon yourself because you're popular to go and do it, because that's mob justice. Now, in terms of the other reforms that, some of the other things that we did, and I wanted to mention, you know, we had lots of parastatals that had potential to make more money that they didn't. Performance contracting was started as a matter of saying, if you are taking public money and we've given you specialist services that to run the port, to do anything else, you need a performance contract to show us what you're doing. And performance contracting is what changed our parastatals, right? Then we also discovered there are parastatals that did not need, you know, to be fully owned by the government. Kengen, seed some of that, yeah? Kenyari, Mumias, right? Then the most successful, Safaricom, right? And Safaricom, Safaricom would not be what it is today if we did not privatize, yeah, through the IPO. But next to Safaricom, and I want to give you this because I promised you that one of the fastest ever executed projects in this country was the laying of the optic fiber cable.
Right.
we discovered that our interconnectivity to the rest of the world was tied to, you had to call London to then be connected to the rest of the world. Our calling rates were very high. We didn't have all the optic fiber cables from the West would come and terminate at South Africa, then from South Africa through Seychelles into India. The whole of East Africa did not have an optic fiber cable, undersea cable. And we were relying on some agreement with the East African countries where there was an African subsea cable, submarine cable system, that every time we went to meetings in South Africa to discuss on how to extend that cable, they would be saying, the partners have agreed to meet again in 6 months. You know? So we went and reported to Kibaki and said, we will never do this thing unless we do our own cable. And he said, Mutahi Kagwe was then the Minister for Communication and Demo as the PS. And I remember them coming to my office in the Treasury on a Thursday in the afternoon. And I said, let's do this thing at 5 when I finish all the issues. We had 3 hours of a technical discussion in terms of what this fiber cable and all that would entail. And I was convinced this is the best thing to do. I then called State House and said, Mzee, we want to come and show you something, but we need to come with maps and everything else to demonstrate you. So he said, come on Tuesday morning. And we were there on Tuesday morning with this small fiber. You know, you've seen the fiber cable? It's almost like, tiny wires. So we go to him and say, these tiny wires is what we want to put and to be laying on information. He said, no, this thing. And you're saying all that information will be passing through. He said, yes. And then you're showing him the map of where we are doing it. And so he said, what do we need to do? We need to take advantage of the monsoon. Yeah, because the survey vessel is only one, and it can only do it when the winds are calm and all that. So we need to start 2 weeks. Now, by the time we do the normal tendering of 90 days, the winds will have started. So we will be delayed by another 1 year or something. He said, you guys, are you serious? You sure what you want to do? Go and bring a cabinet paper, right? We discuss it in cabinet. You convince your colleagues to endelea hii kitu. You know, we left State House. We went, did the cabinet paper. That Thursday, we had a cabinet meeting. We took everyone through. It was approved. And he said, I want to know progress on that thing.
Right.
Okay? And we had the fiber cable, the East African Marine System, TEAMS. And that TEAMS revolutionized our communication. That what brought down the cost of communication. Right. It ensured that the expansion of mobile connectivity and people having mobile phones, and then all the other things that came with it started with that. And then the next item which is related to that.
Just hold on so that we listen to Raquel Mugai, who is joining us from Parliament, to bring us to speed on what's progressing right there, because we saw earlier members of the public being cleared to sort of start viewing the body of the late president. Raquel Mugai, good morning. What can you tell us this morning?
Good morning to you, Gitoku. So far, they've just been allowed, the public has been allowed to view the body of the late President Mwai Kibaki just between 10 to 15 minutes ago. Some of them were here from as early as 7 a.m., just braving this chilly weather, sort of. It's a cold morning, but it's really good to see these people having come this morning just to pay their last respects. But up until this point, the line is not as long, or the queue is not as long, because it just stretches outside up until where they are getting to pass through and having the security check done. And it's really good, because I would really love to speak to some of these people and to understand why leave everything else to just come and do this. What does it really mean for them? The line is moving now, but if I can just pick someone, mzee naweza kutoka line kidogo, njoo tu. Let me move closer. Asante sana. Kabla tu nikuachilie uende, tueleze majina, umetoka wapi leo asubuhi na mbona ukaamua kuja hapa leo?
Okay,
majina kamili?
My name is Duncan Dilango.
Okay.
Duncan Dilango. I have come from Juja. I have come to view the body of the renowned, the late Honorable late President Mwai Kibaki, because I've been eager to see this hero who was transformed Kenya financially. So I decided to come and see and view the body. I came very early, left very early in the house so that I can get the queue, because I knew there must be another arrangement of this auspicious event. Thank you very much.
Yes. And probably before I let you go, what is one thing that you have learned from Mwai Kibaki that you'll also love other leaders to echo or learn from him?
I would like people to emulate his leadership strategies, tactics, and how the calmness of his leadership. And I would like him to, because he was a corruption-free president, I would like other people to emulate the same, so that we have a transformative president who will come later. And of course, to mind about the economy, because the economy is the one that drives systems and opportunities of irrespective of where you come from or irrespective of your status in the status quo. He was minding about each and every sector of trade or every sector of development. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much for allowing to speak to us. Just before I get you return to you back to Studio Gituku, this is how it looks like. The queue has moved so fast.
Right, unfortunately having challenges with Raquel's audio, but you can hear one of the Kenyans there saying why they want to pay their last respects, and especially describing the president with some of the virtues that he may be known of. I know Honorable Kimunya would want to leave, but allow me just a few interventions from Governor and Dr. Nyekao. And it sounds like President Kibaki was such a person who is able to get through the haystack and go for whatever specific he needs. How has this trait been passed on to the generation that has come after him? I know there's, yes, actually, after him, you could be, are you in the next generation or the next after him? Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So thank you. Maybe it's good to say that if our generation wants a good example, good leadership, they are not in short of those examples. If they opt to follow it or otherwise, that is a personal decision. But I think in President Mwai Kibaki, we saw a lot. And just maybe to say, first, you know, we have said that he took his work very seriously. And that was demonstrated even from his attire. The way he is lying in state with that dark blue, black, and black shoes, that was him. And the tie was always blue, never red, never shouting, that kind of thing. So he took his work very serious. And I remember many a times that officialdom almost rubbed people the other way around. And, you know, there were people who were very good friends with him before he got into office. Now he got into office. But he's so official that sometimes they didn't quite know where to place themselves. I remember one of our hoteliers in Nakuru who had been a strong DP supporter over the years. Would send me greetings, greet him there when you get to Nairobi, tell him you want to come, on and on. But along the way, he fell ill. And so I kept on telling Mzee that your friend is unwell, you know, and he's coming to the hospital every so often. He was called Wamungara. But Mzee was more interested in, is he getting the medical treatment he requires? The financial part of the of it, you know? And obviously you have had many cases where people thought maybe at least a visit would have done, but he was very official. And I think that also reflected in the way he did his work. Sometimes the balance is not very easy because the call to duty sometimes gets you off. And very few Kenyans will remember even the president speaking in a mother tongue. Rarely did he ever do that. And even when he found himself in the company of villagers who would only speak in that language, he was very shy. Not therefore to mean that speaking in vernacular is wrong, but that's just how he perceived it. And I think it has to do with socialization. Remember, these were the Makerere sort of graduates. And I think the point there is that whatever duties or assignments we take in public office, we have to be serious. There is a way people can turn up in an office and see you as the office bearer, just don't think you take your work seriously. So that was very key to him. Then the other matter that maybe our generation must also look at is the issue of respect for the Constitution and the rule of law. And I know even in today's paper there is this article on him after he left office appearing in court, trying to pursue a land issue in Othaya. That is not normal. Even a member of parliament would rather use other means to have the matter sorted. But here is an immediate former president. When he was in office, he probably would have had ways of sorting that.
Right.
But he decides, when I'm in office, I'm not going to deal with this matter. When I leave, I will go and give my story to the magistrate in Nyeri. I think that is the highest demonstration of the respect to the rule of law. Personally going there and not even delegating it to any other person. And I think we really must emphasize this because the law is made for all of us, not for some of us.
Right.
And the moment we are able to appreciate this, then the country can be able to run forward. The other issue is you know, as politicians, sometimes we are very interested in personal aggrandizement or like it is you and yourself. And I think the best way to remember Kibaki is that there are very many institutions that came during his time. And I think the best one is actually Thika Road. And when Thika Road was nearing completion, then PS Kamau, Michael Kamau, and the officials from the ministry went to request that, can we call it Mwai Kibaki Highway? And his answer was very simple. Where does that road lead to? Thika. That is the name of the road.
Yes.
So I think the point is he was not doing these things with a view to have his name there or for publicity and that kind of thing. And I think that also goes a long way to say that whatever we do, we must look at it beyond ourselves into the next generation. The decisions we make impact on the next generation. Then maybe also to salute the issue of having top brains around ourselves. Whether you're a member of parliament, a senator, a governor, whichever office you are, sometimes the people around you are the people you bounce the ideas with. If they happen to be lower than you, then more often than not, the advice you get will reflect that. And you will remember, without necessarily naming names, but you had Muthaura was top brain, ambassador, PS, did everything, you know? And I think he was the best, in my view, that you could ever have. You had Professor Nick Wanjohi, you know? So I think sometimes our opinions are shaped by the people around us. The sum total of the 5 people you socialize with on a daily basis reflect your opinions, your worldview, and also your position on certain key issues.
Right.
So I think as we move forward, because you've asked what lessons we can be able to learn from there, I think the most important part is also surround yourself with men and women of integrity, but above all, those who can give you better ideas and even yourself.
Good brains. And Dr. Nyikao, how difficult is it at such a time that the political heat has gone so high? And I mean no offense here, because listen to the story of Dr. Kimunya here. He had been an accountant working in that field for so many years, even became chairman of ISPAC, then became a cabinet minister. Today, sometimes you'll find that there are cabinet secretaries who maybe are coming directly from politics, or there are some politicians elected to office coming straight from school or straight from politics at a different level. How difficult is it to now surround yourself with top brains while also respecting the price that you have to pay for political support?
Let me give a summary of what I would view President Kibaki as in terms of what you have asked. He projected in my mind as a professional running an economy, not as a politician running a country. I think that to me was the distinction. Eventually the country benefited, but he viewed himself as a professional running an economy to benefit the people, not as a politician running a country. Now, that goes into what you said. He actually had a retinue of very brilliant people when he actually picked the best in any field. And if I remember, we used to have PSS meetings every week. We had a PS meeting, or at least twice a month we had a PSS meeting. And people who were there and all other accounting officers were people who had excelled in their own areas. Let's take us revenue collection. I remember when we were in Naivasha and Mr. Waweru, who was then in charge of KRA, was giving a presentation on how he's going to improve revenue collection. It was a beautiful presentation. So you had people like the late Nalo, who was in the East African community. You had Engineer Kamau in the roads, people like that. This professor, I forget his name, who was in agriculture. These people are extremely professional, sometimes even academic. Dr. Sambili, who was in planning, PS Ndemo. So, and then when we always presented to the whole PS meeting what you want to do in your ministry, and they would critique it. And then, so it was a very professional way of doing things. Now, how we would apply this in the context of devolution, I wish we would have a similar application even at county levels. Governor Lee is with us. So who do you pick people, your CECs and your directors in such a way that you actually have top-notch people and then protect them from politics? My summary would be, it's also the duty of the head of state, and I saw this even during the coalition government, when both President Kibaki and Raila actually many times came and actually protected the professionals on the decisions they have made. So you get people who know what they are doing, people of high intellect. They are put to account on what they plan to do and tested at the end, but protected from the vagaries of politics that quite often will sweep people right off the track of development when you are pursuing political ends. I think he perfected that distinction and protecting service delivery from politics and picking the best that were available and allowing those people to do what they know how best to do and support them in monetary terms, support them in political terms. That, in my view, is what we really need to emulate from him. To some extent, tame politics so that service delivery can go on. That's how I would actually summarize it.
Okay.
And even if people now, you move from wherever you are into politics, if you have this background, like Honorable Kumunya there, Governor Lee, and even myself, whenever you are actually on the floor of the assembly, whenever you are discussing, even when you are actually politicking, at the back of your mind, this agenda we are discussing now, the discussion we are making, how does it in the end translate into service delivery? So what structures will we create? What financials shall we put in? And how shall it deliver to a child in Migori if it is health, security, if it is in Marsabit? So that when we are doing politics, we must realize that in the end, it is service delivery. And service delivery is always at the hands of technical people.
Right.
So that, in my view, is the way I think you can actually move politics into planning, building structures, delivering services, monitoring and assessing people and even government and even departments on their delivery.
Right. I hear you, Dr. Nika, and you raise an important point, especially when you talk about service delivery and reaching.
We lost them.
Reaching real people. I will be introducing, sorry, Dr. Nyikal, I can still hear you. I will be Introducing a gentleman here that I want Honorable Amos Kimunya to see before he leaves. He's a young man. He had never gone to school up until the age of 11. And when President Kibaki came into office in 2003, he joined Standard 1. He never had the opportunity of going to early childhood education, but cleared Standard 8 at the age of 19. Today, he is a graduate and he'll be joining us shortly to speak about how that impacted on them. But tell me about how coming to government and making that decision. We promised free primary education. Now we have to execute it. I know at that time you're not in the Ministry of Finance, but you are in government. So what exactly are the steps that you had now to put in place to make this a reality, moving from a promise to a reality?
Our campaigns. Kibaki was very clear that, like I said earlier, you cannot lead an ignorant people. You know, education is what will liberate the people. And we had seen, you know, going around the country, you had seen all these youngsters, you know, doing nothing, good potential, but they're lacking education. Because education had been, you know, kind of brought on its knees. And he said, we have announced free education, and we must deliver. Professor Saitoti, you are the Minister for Education. And I remember when we went to a meeting, and you know, there are all those issues. Yes, we've asked on this, but do we have the money? And he was very clear. We have promised the Kenyan people, you are the Minister for Education, you are the Treasury, now that to Muraria, between yourselves and these other ministers here, mutafute pesa. If you have to sacrifice other programs in these other ministries, so be it. But the Kenyan child must go to school. Right. Because you are not going to wait for 1 year when you're looking for money, because the child who should be in school will now have lost a year. You have lost a generation. This is priority, okay? And hence we reorganized and we had the money. And like I said earlier, because now people saw good faith, people saw that he is a person who is committed. The development partners started bringing in their pledges. We will help on this, we will help on this, we will help on this, because they could see the commitment. And like they say, the rest is history. We have managed to bring in, the 8 million. We even had, you know, Mzee Marube coming in, and he became Marugi. The poster child.
Marugi, I think, was his name.
Yeah?
Marugi.
Marugi, yes.
Imani Marugi.
Marugi, yes. And he was an 80-something coming to class. Right. And then it did not stop there, because Kibaki believed so much in education. That when we were doing the 2010 Constitution, he insisted that that must be put in the Constitution, that basic education is free and compulsory. Right. Right? Put it in the Constitution so that nobody will ever change it after he has left. Right? Because it had been started on, off, but now it's in the Constitution. Right. Okay? So not just beyond putting it in 22003, but into the future. So before I let you go, how come, with all the much work that President Kibaki had done in the first term, and delivering on the free primary education, improving the economy to growth of about 7.3%, and he still didn't manage, or rather, the election was so contested to the extent that it ended up the way it did, how come he wasn't able to deal with that other side of politics? You know, politics is very dynamic. We started together in NAC with, you know, as a big coalition. We had a fallout, you know, because some things were not done exactly the way they should have been done. And so we had a fallout within our partners. And by the time we went to the constitutional debate, because we had said we would do a constitution within the first 100 days. By the time we went to Bomas to now work out the constitution, now the debate on the constitution ended up being, you know, the competition, where the competition within the NAC then came out. And we had a very unfortunate situation where within the government, we had two sides split. That split, the seed that was planted in 2005, went on until 2007.
Right.
And also, there is the people we had defeated in 2003. You know, usually in competition, your enemy's enemy is your friend.
Right.
So there is that group also now teamed up with the internal enemy. So, and then we pulled out Uhuru from it, but the dynamics were so different because of, and that would probably be a whole hour of discussion. Probably we'll discuss at a different time.
Okay.
So the issues of 2007 had a bit to do with what happened in 2003, how we treated the people who left in 2003, how we also treated the people we went in with in 2004, 2005, and hence it did not matter the progress we had made. The politics took center stage.
Right.
And but luckily, bringing people back together to see the sense of the bigger picture was also his hallmark.
Right.
And when he met and discussed with the Honorable Raila, and they said, you know, Kenya is bigger than all these things. What are we fighting? You have more people in parliament. I have State House.
Right.
But none of us can work. You can't be the president, and I can't be able to control parliament. Let's put our resources together. Let's get together, right? Now, and they had the handshake and the Grand Coalition Agreement, government.
Right.
And the progress continued.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And Raila became the biggest defender of Kibaki projects.
You're right.
So
Honorable Kimanya, I want to introduce you because I need to let you go. You're going to Inoro FM. I need to introduce Kioko Mwinzi to you. Kioko, if you can join us here on set. He, like I told you, joined Standard 1 at the age of 11, and now he's a graduate of computer science, software engineering from Masinde Muriro University, and he's one of the many stories that can be told of Kenyans that were impacted directly by the programs of the government of Mwai Kibaki. And of course, there are many such stories across the country, but we found someone that can give us a representation and talk about their story. And when we spoke, he told me about the school he went to. I just want to bring it out. That is Kambusu Primary School in Kitui County, which is in Mwingi North constituency. And of course, having been one of those privileged learners to have had that impact from President Kibaki. He'll be joining us. We're trying to adjust his microphone. But Governor Lee Kinyanjui, what do you have to say about the social impact of... no, I'm told that now he's ready. Hi, good morning, Kioko.
Good morning, Sam.
It's good to see you here.
Pleasure.
And tell Kenyans and the honorable members who are here, because Honorable Kimunya was in government with President Kibaki from day one.
Yeah.
Is it from day 3 or 4?
From day 1.
Okay. So tell us about how that government changed your life.
Well, thank you so much, Sam. As you've said, my name is Kioko Mwinzi, and that tells you a lot. It introduces you to who I am. I don't actually have a baptismal name, so you can imagine where I come from, deep in the interior parts of Mwingi North. That's where I come from. And I would say that I'm among the first beneficiaries, that is to graduate in 2019. That's when I left campus. I did computer science, having joined school at the age of 11. So for all those years, I had been at home, hoping, behold, hope that someday a miracle will happen. My parents were they couldn't afford. My dad had 4 wives, no source of income. So you find that among my 9 siblings, the most learned by the time I started school had gone up to class 5, I think. Yeah, 5. That was most learned person. But I had all along believed that that wasn't going to be my end. So I started working in the farms, looking after cattle in the farms for people, up to around 2000. That's when I heard about this Kibaki guy. that someone somewhere is thinking about introducing free education, whereby the students will not be paying anything. And I was like, I hope it happens. I remember praying for a Kibaki. I didn't know, but I really prayed about it. And in 2002, that's when it happened. Had that the guy became president. And I didn't care what was going to happen from there, because I wanted to go to school with the uniforms, without, I knew that my dream was to be realized. So I started asking around the schools, and but unfortunately most of the schools could not actually admit me. Owing to my age, my stature, I was a big boy. So most of the teachers actually would just tell me straight to my face, just go home, get a farm. After some few years, you can get yourself a family or something like that. So finally, out of 4 schools, one school that was about 10 kilometers away from our home is the one that picked me. And
you'd walk there every day?
Yeah.
10 kilometers?
10.
Honorable Amos Kimunya, as I let you go, your words to this young man.
Well, he's an example of resilience, and I believe there are so many who can learn from you. Kenyans are generally very resilient and will really know what to do and patient. But we have a new generation that's the so-called microwave. They want quick solutions. They will not invest faith, effort. They will not want to think of traveling 10 kilometers per day, 20, 10 to 10 back to get an education. So, because people want things that are, here now that they can touch. And they need to learn. Some of us will, Lee will tell you his story, we all tell you our stories.
Right.
We didn't start on a silver platter. There are people who believe that I started off life as a minister. But to get there, it took a whole lot of that, and I'm so encouraged with this story of Kyoko, yeah?
Yeah.
And I'm hoping there'll be many others out there who pick something from him and see, when you're given an opportunity, take full advantage of it. And stop looking at the problems you've had. Look at the opportunities that it can be opened through utilizing that chance you've been given. Make yourself better.
I think this is one of the best examples of how politics can impact lives. And thank you so much, Dr. Kimunya, for joining us this morning to have this conversation. We'll have to let you go so that you can join our sister station, Inoro FM. They've been waiting for you. Pass our apologies there. But as we do that, let's listen to Raquel Mugai, who is on standby with Professor Kaloki, who is at Parliament Buildings. Raquel, over to you.
So, I'll let you.
Yes, so thank you so much, Gitoko. We are here joined by Professor Kaluki, who just walked in to view and to pay their last respects to the late President Mwai Kibaki, together with Bonapoli Kapigade. But just to look at it and to hear from him what this means for him, and also moving forward as he steps into matters, leadership, into politics, what are some of the things that he can probably emulate? Thank you so much for joining us here. If you can just move here. Thank you so much. Probably just tell us briefly what has been your interaction with the late President Mwai Kibaki.
You see, Mungai, I've been able to serve under the President Mwai Kibaki. That is the 10th Parliament, when I was a member of Parliament here in this Parliament. And during that time, he's a president that for 5 years I was able to know he was my president, as I was a member of Parliament for the larger Kibwezi. And during that particular time, I was also a member of the Speaker's panel. And that means we had a lot of interactions with him. And I was also a vice chair of a departmental committee of the Parliament, that is Finance and Trade. And so I was able to move a lot of issues, and with this guidance, budgetary issues, we were able to relate a lot. And so it's a president that I knew, it's a president that I was able to work, and we were able to deliver a lot. And one thing I can remember about President Mwai Kibaki, he was really an economist, and the planning was very key for him. Everything that we did, we had to keep with the budget, and we had to keep our requests within the budget. And so that was a big deal that I really remember him for.
And as you now step into matters politics, looking to be the deputy or to deputize Bwana Kapegade, what are some of these instances or characters that you've learned that you're willing to now emulate moving on forward?
Well, first of all, let me also thank the Kenyans, thank the Azimio, La Umoja, One Kenya Alliance Party for nominating me also to be the deputy governor nominee to work under the governor, Mr. Igade. As I appreciate that, let me also say we will continue, we are going to campaign, and if we win the seat, there's a lot that I've been able to learn from the former president. That means proper planning. This city needs better planning, issues to empower our youth, to ensure we create opportunities for them, employment, to be able to link this city, this great city, our capital city here, with the other major cities of the world, and make sure we are getting development opportunities coming to this country. We definitely will be able to lobby for them. And President Kibaki was a great lobbyist for financial support for this country, trade issues, and the trade between our country and other countries. And so there's a lot that we'll be able to take from where he left and where he was able to teach some of us so that we can be able to create opportunities. We empower our people here, and issues of economy, infrastructure. For example, look at the Thika super highway. This was a major project in the entire continent, which is really a major road, which was planned and implemented during the President Kibaki. And so some of these projects will be able to do big projects for the city, for the benefit of the people that live in this city of our country.
Yes. And before I let you go, Prof, just to take you back a few years back, probably what is this some of personal light moments that you shared with Mwai Kibaki, if you can remember any at the top of your mind, just as you walked through paying your last respects?
You know, as I pay my respect to the president that I knew, the president that I worked with, he was a serious president, definitely, but there were also easy moments for him. You make some jokes that all of us enjoyed them, and so without even mentioning them, we even call some people some names just to lighten the moment. And that is how the president was, and that's how he was able to get all the Kenyans liking him and being able to bond with him. And he was also able to put the Kenyans together, and that was really a president that we will remember. And really, I'm here to pay my last respect to President Mwai Kibaki and his family.
Thank you so much, Professor Kaloki. Just him mentioning a few details and sharing the light moments that he's had with the late President Mwai Kibaki, his interaction with him when he served as Member of Parliament and under him. And therefore, at this point, we'll just be keeping you up to date on what exactly is happening at this point. The queues are now moving faster, not as before, because Gituku, at the moment, they began at around 7 a.m. That's when the public was allowed to view the body. And therefore, we'll be keeping you up to speed on what's happening here from the Parliament buildings. Gituku.
All right, thank you so much, Raquel Mugadhi. Stay there. I will be sure to join you shortly to get more views and what Kenyans think about the former president and his presidency. I'm still here in studio with Kioko Mwinzi, who is a beneficiary of the free primary education program that was introduced by President Kibaki in 2003. I'm also with the Governor Lee Kinyanjui from Nakuru County, and I'm also with Dr. James Nyikal, the Member of Parliament for Seme. He's joining us from Mombasa. And I want to finish up with the political leaders here. First of all, when you listen to Kioko's story here, how many of such do you find in Nakuru County, and how has that informed your resolve to go for political office when you figure out the challenges that Kenyans go through?
Thank you, and first is to congratulate Kioko. And Kioko is the face of many Kenyans. Obviously, President Kibaki didn't know him, but his policies have changed his life. Maybe today he would still be somewhere back in the village, would be doing manual jobs, but through that education, he has transformed and has a skill that is globally accepted. So I think education changes everything, and that's one thing President Kibaki really believed in. If you want to change a country, you can get minerals, but without education, you'll not be able to exploit those minerals. You can get anything you want, but without education, without your people being educated, then you cannot be able to run. So I think this generation that came from the year 2002, especially those who came from underprivileged circumstances, because there's a certain degree in which a society can be unequal because of access to education. Those who access education have better jobs. Those who do not access education also have a lower probability of making it in life. So there's a sense in which we can perpetuate poverty through education. And like we say, education is the final equalizer. So giving everybody an opportunity to education, I think, is everything. And I'm happy that we are talking of a living testimony, you know, somebody who can say, I was there, I did it, and here I am today. So we want to congratulate you, and also the many others who were touched by the programs that were brought under President Kibaki. Allow me quickly to just say two issues that were mentioned by Nyikal.
Sure.
First, just as county governments, what have we learned from this whole story about getting top brains? And I want to say, like in my own, out of my 10, about 4 to 5 actually have PhDs in my own cabinet at Nakuru. And there is no value in us spending 30% of our resources on education. And when it comes to making decisions and putting people in places where they need to use that education, we go for anything less than what is required.
Right.
So we believe that moving forward, I think even in the civil service at the county level, even in our own private businesses, let's get the best and also invest in nurturing the Kiokos of the day so they can also achieve their dream. The other thing I also wish to remember President Kibaki for is the art of patience. I think many people don't understand that patience is a very strong weapon. Many will recall in 2008, during the swearing-in, there was a lot of commotion in Parliament. There were all manner of arguments and a lot of disrespect. But he stood there, and at some point you would wonder whether he was listening to all this. But he would employ patience to its fullest. So you make all your noise, and he knew you can't talk till tomorrow. You'll get tired at some point and you will sit down.
I remember he was sitting at the front, so he could see everything.
And there was no emotion on his face to say he's not happy or anything. No. So I think sometimes also for especially many of us who are now in public life, you don't have to react to everything that happens today. Every day you are saying this. Sometimes employ patience as a weapon in politics, and it has worked, because sometimes you react to something, you say this, you say the other, people also, you know, lose track because there's too much that is going on. Then also is the issue of skeptics. You remember in 2002, even when the free primary education was promised, everybody said it's not possible. You know how many young people are out there? You know how many young 10-year-olds would want to go to school? How would you be able to fund it? I think all I'm trying to say is that the Kenyan economy is very resilient. If well managed, we can be able to achieve a lot. And I think this is really what we should be asking. Is it possible to pull, you know, in the past, we look at the economic growth in terms of GDP and all those other issues. But there are very important social indicators, including education. It doesn't matter how big your GDP is when children cannot access education. It doesn't matter how big your GDP if all your people are trapped in poverty. So the issue of now it has moved from GDP to how many people are we able to transit from one level to the next level. How many millions have moved from poverty to middle income, from middle income to the next level? And I think this is a conversation that we'd want to do. And the best way to do it is through education. Education is a long-term emancipator. And I think Kibaki understood this from the very beginning. Otherwise, thank you, Kioko.
Thank you.
And on behalf of the millions who benefited, we want to congratulate you. And the opportunities are there. Just go with the same spirit. Thank you
so much. Great, a very good point to put it at, and thank you so much, Governor Lee Kinyanjui, for joining us. I'll have to let you go because I have other engagements to take care of, but you remain here with Kioko and, of course, Dr. Nyikal joining us from Mombasa to give us also his closing remarks on this. And as we continue this, Kioko, let me get back to the story that you were telling me about, that you'd walk on a daily basis 10 kilometers to access your school and 10 kilometers back home. You did that for the 8 years?
No, I did that for 3 years. But what I did after I got the chance, I had to prove myself that I wasn't going to be bullying students, the other pupils, because I was big. So I settled down right in standard 1 to work. So I got down to work. And for the 3 years that I was in that school, Masukanioni Primary, I never dropped to position 2. I was always the best pupil in the class. So the schools that had previously rejected me actually started asking me to go back to them. So, however, when I decided to join the nearest school, which is Kamboso that I told you about, I had heard that they wanted me to join. But when I went there, they were like, the classes are full, but we would really want you to join us. So I didn't really know what they meant. But I decided I wasn't going back to the other school because I had suffered for 3 years and it was taking a toll on me. So I stayed with them, like by force. I would sneak to classes. Some teachers would chase me. Others would just let me in. Yeah, so finally, when we did the exam, I was in position 1.
So you started an examination, yet you are not a registered?
Yes, I was not registered. Yeah, I did the exam. When they asked money for the exam, I just paid. It was 20 shillings. So I got it paid, and I did the exam, and I was the best pupil. So they had to get
standard 3 or 4?
Standard 3 now. Standard 3, yeah. So it was 2 years the other school. The third year, I came to Kamboso. So it's standard 3 now.
Right.
That is 2005. Yes.
So you told me that since you were born up until 2002, you had never stepped into a class?
I had back in around 97. I tried, but I was going with my elder brothers, who are in, I think, standard 3, around there.
Okay.
But then, at some point, the mom could not raise the money that was required. So
how much was it?
It was about 100. Yeah, I think 100 per head. She couldn't raise it. And because I was the youngest, I was told to stay at home until maybe later on. So even that later on, my brothers so dropped out because even theirs wasn't forthcoming. So I stayed at home, waiting and hoping.
So let's get back to, you're now in standard 3, you've become position 1, now you are registered.
So they
enrolled you?
They registered me in second term. Yeah, they didn't call me, so I just started appearing registers. They would call my name, so I was like, oh, become a member here. Yeah, that was near, because it was about 4 kilometers.
Okay.
Yeah.
And were you the only one who now was in school from home, or your siblings now had also joined?
So I had my brother who had joined with me from the other school, so I came with him there.
Okay.
So we joined with him, we went through the same struggle. We were in the same class.
And the rest, did they finish?
No, they never did.
To date?
No.
Okay. So now, still carrying on, at the time you were in standard 3, how old are you?
So I was about 14 now. Yeah,
14.
14.
And you're in school with 7, 8-year-olds.
Yeah.
How was that?
It was challenging because mostly in case of anything happening, everybody would be like, it must be you. It must be you, you know. You are the biggest here, so it must be you caused this. So, but at some point, I think teachers started accepting me that I was in for studies and not to bully anyone. And considering my continued performance from the other school to this other school, they like realized I was in search for education, and they started accepting me. So it became, I started feeling well at home. Yeah, although it would always feel demeaning, you know, you are studying with kids, very small ones, some are like, yeah.
Did it affect you?
Not really, not as much.
Did you have friends in your class?
No.
Okay, we'll talk about that shortly. Yeah. Dr. Nyikal, welcome back. I'm still with Kioko Mwinzi here, who, like I told you earlier on, is a beneficiary of the free primary education. And first of all, your reaction to the story of Kioko, but also how many, especially from your constituency in Seme, would have a similar story like Kioko?
I think there would be many from my constituency who would have a similar story, except that we can't pinpoint them, but there are many. But to me, this demonstrates how political statement, political intention to change something can, if properly managed, can translate to benefits to individuals. So that the statement which, as he says, he had in 2000, that somebody is coming who wants to give free primary education. Come 2002, it is actually there, and he takes advantage of it. Now that is now, you have an intention, you have a policy, you pass it through politically, then you actually implement it through the structures, and eventually the results are there. So it's really great. I mean, even in health, we probably have similar cases that we can. But I know that during Kibaki's time, we actually had, particularly vaccines, the new vaccines that came that were thought to be expensive, he readily said, we buy those vaccines. If donors were helping us, put the little money the donors want us to put as counterpart funds and get our children vaccinated. Now, when you look back at the infant mortality, it has been reduced so much so that you don't hear about babies dying. Those are the effects. So there are a lot of people who have benefited. And I think Kioko's story is one that should be highlighted. And we as politicians, we as administrators, should realize that when we make decisions, if we follow up, the benefits will be there for people to see and enjoy. I think that is what comes out in this story. And as I was saying, similarly, even in other sectors, we are talking about education. What about in women empowerment? The gender issue. When in Kibaki's time, the issue of gender parity, even before the Constitution, was there. And we had a whole Ministry of Gender with a whole structure from the ministry. That time, there were no counties. From the ministry all down to the districts, there were gender and social development officers that looked at the issue of what things are affecting women, not just in positions they hold, but in their daily lives. And we had the concept of gender-sensitive budgeting. What is in the budget that will actually improve the well-being of women and support the heavy social work they're doing in the society, just like availability of water, just the ease with which they find antenatal services, just the family planning services that they find. So these are actually important. And then remember the Women Enterprise Fund. This is something that people don't talk about a lot about. But he saw, when I joined the Ministry of Gender now as a permanent secretary, he said we need to support the women. And therefore this money had actually been put aside. And he said, now operationalize this. So there are a lot of women that I know of that have been able to access the Women Enterprise Fund and have done a lot of things. Groups of women at very low interest rates. And I know groups that, I know one group, for example, in my constituency, that just started with 100,000 shillings as a loan, and now they've reached a point that I think they have bought a minibus or a matatu that they are running as a group successfully. So I think this story tells us that when we have a vision politically, we must follow it through and allow it to mature. The other thing that it brings around is the issue of cooperation. You know, that time was the time of the coalition government.
Right.
And you see this many, the infrastructure. I think Right Honorable Raila was in charge of roads with Engineer Kamau. And the idea of infrastructure was put in place, plans were put, and even up to now, we are still implementing. The expressway was part of that plan. In the PSS meeting, we used to call it double-decker, all the way from the airport to Waiyaki Way. So I think he, as I said earlier, had the ability to have a vision, have a politically move it, and then get it into government structure and service delivery, and eventually achieve.
Right.
I think that is what we need to emulate from him. Right now, I think we need to tone down a bit of politics and see how the little we have, what we have in our manifestos, how will politics be toned down to let it get into implementation? So, in my view, I think Kioko's story demonstrates everything, that whatever policy you have, it must translate into helping people at individual level.
And Dr. Nikal, I need to let you go, but before I do so, because you speak so well about the impact of President Kibaki and how he's able to fuse between a vision and politically entrenching it into governance and becoming a reality, do we have enough people copying this? Has it become an ideology, or is still, is it sustainable in the long run in the future of our politics?
It's not only sustainable, it is the only way out. There's no way out. And that's why I'm saying, maybe at the end of this election that we are going through, we should shift and see after the elections, when the elections are over, what we had in our manifestos, can we change them into policies? And then can we change them into deliverables for the people? It is something we must emulate, in my mind. I think there are people, as I've been mentioning, the same people that were working, some are still there. There are younger people who are in the system then. There are younger people that are coming in. And some of these things have been incorporated in the Constitution, like gender parity issues. You can just pick them there, put a good structure for empowering women and put it in place. Universal health coverage, that is something we have even in the Constitution, Article 43, and now we have it as a policy. We are talking of using NHIF to deliver it. We must just cut down the politics, deliver, put that one, and in my mind, maybe as a medical person, I really long one day to see when with a card in your hands, you can walk into a decent hospital, whether it is government, whether it is mission, whether it is private, and you walk out because your national social health insurance has paid everything. It is doable. It can be done. And there are enough people who can do it. Many of them are not in politics, and we are not careful. Politics may stop us from seeing them, because many of these brilliant people, like we are talking people in tax collection, in engineers, in infrastructure, they were there even before Kibaki came in. But he went out to look for them, and then he let merit speak. And then you said you would do. You said how. You are given the support. At the end of it, you are tested through performance contracting. Did you deliver? I think that to me is something we must emulate. It is doable. Like now we are talking of social protection. You can see the Azmio issue of the 6,000. With that, even if what we have been doing was about 2,000, if you go to 6,000, if it is practical, if the economy of it, the financing of it, the funding of it is real, then you can deliver a free health care, because all you need is take 500 out of it, and then insure all the other people who are unable, because this money is intended, if possible, to go to people who are unable to take care of themselves. Instead of giving the whole of 6,000, just give 5,500, take 500, pay it into insurance. Now they're insured. Work out our health facilities so that you acceptable level of health care. We're not looking for these big hospitals where most of the cost is probably will go into the hotel amenities, but where you walk in and you get treated in a decent place and you go home without paying at the point of delivery, without the body being detained, without you being detained in hospital. We can do these things as a country. That I'm sure, and Honorable Kibaki's legacy is that it can actually be done.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. James Nyikal. He's the Member of Parliament for Seme constituency.
Okay.
Also former Principal Secretary and a former Director of Medical Services, joining us from Mombasa to share his perspectives about President Mwai Kibaki and his policies. And before we get back here in studio, Raquel Mugai is on standby at Parliament buildings. Raquel, who do you have now?
Yes, right now I'm joined by Honorable Beatrice Elachi, who has just walked in and paid his last respects, but it will also be good to hear from her. Thank you so much, Madam Elachi. If you can just mention to us probably what has been the interaction with the former president and in what capacity, and what is it that you can remember from him?
Thank you very much, and as we continue paying our last respect to our former president, who was a dear father to many of us. I think when we were young, we were privileged to work with him, privileged to be given duties. And one of the things I will always remember is the banana orange referendum that we had. And we were in banana with him, pushing for the government at that time. And when we lost, I remember going to the late Mishuki's hotel at Windsor in the evening, and everyone at that time had been withdrawn and been told they have been sacked. And I remember Mishuki saying, I think for the first time, the president has to do the right thing as we move on. But then one of the things, at one point we sat down, that worried him so much after that, was a day we had a meeting, and seated with Mishuki, he asked, why is it that we hate each other? What is this that the country has really become very polarized? And we sat down, and I remember after that with now Netembea, who is in Trans Nzoia, we decided to just go around the country. That is when I got a privilege of going around the 210 constituencies just to understand Kenya. And there was a lot of cry. And we brought back the report to him. And from there on, when we were moving on to the elections of 2007, I think he understood it was going to be a very difficult 2007 election. And that's how we started the peace caravans for women. That is how I remember I joined the Kibaki Tena team. I was part of the women's movement. We went around the country. Most interesting was that women believed in Mwai Kibaki. And for us, women is because of, one, the economic empowerment he had brought in for the SMEs. Women were the ones who benefited more. The 30% that we talk about today, he's the one who put it first as a policy for women. And more importantly, if you wanted to trade on the stock exchange, that was the time you would walk in and trade. I remember that was the time during Kibaki's time that you didn't need to know anyone in office. All you needed to do is look at a tender and try your best, and you'll find yourself doing a tender for government. It was a time where Kibaki believed that you don't need to know who Kibaki is or who is in this office, but you will walk in and be privileged to have something from government. And so for us, as he departs, and we are now in an election, I think the most thing we need to ask ourselves is, how do we bring back dignity to our people? dignity in terms of their lives, dignity in terms of the economy. The president has done his best. The president, if he had a team, the way Kibaki had a team, I think he would have put Kenya to a better. He has done his best in all that Kibaki has left him, and I'm proud that he goes to heaven knowing very well every project that was in Vision 2030 that he started, His Excellency Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta has finished. And that is one thing he goes down knowing what I promised Kenya from 2003 to now has come to pass. But the most important thing now is who takes over the mantle to ensure we go back again and rebuild that peace that he would wish to see. Because within peace is when your economy grows. That peace that both Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta is telling us, it is needed for us for growth. We remember the digital growth. That digital growth comes when you have stability. And so we pray for stability. For me, I want to pray for the family, that you had a father who was a father who believed in Kenya, never believed in his giving his children what they needed, never took advantage of that. And so we have to remember them. We have to take care also of them. For the good things he did for us, let us not leave his children to come and ask things in offices of Kenya. Let them get that opportunity the way the Father gave us that opportunity. And that is my prayer to all of us. May he rest in peace and may he find angels on his way. God bless.
And also just speaking of women empowerment, because that is something great, having interacted with him in that capacity. But from your standpoint, a lot has been said about him. What is that one thing, one legacy that stands out for you, even as during his passing?
For me, one legacy that stands, that I'm here today because of his legacy. If he never picked me among the many women and put me in his process, I might not have reached where I am today. So I go knowing it was within his legacy that him, Mishuki, at that time, the president who was the DPM, in that, for them to make me the SG of then, that would have been the party of 2013, which we started in 2011 with the late Haji, with Mudama and many others. And one other thing I'll always remember, sitting down with him, you'll always find him with wise men. Men who sat and you'd listen to them, and when you leave there, you go knowing very well, this is how you have to do your things. And I want to thank him for that. And to thank him for teaching us one thing, work hard to get what is yours. Try to be a model of using public resources the right way. I'll always remember Kibaki for that. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Betty Salachi. Just paying her last respects to a man and a president of the nation whom we got to interact with, just speaking so loudly of his legacy, where she is right now is because of the former President Mwai Kibaki. And the fact that apart from just the much that he did in terms of infrastructure, in terms of health, in terms of women empowerment as well, he was able to show that at the end of the day you need to work hard for everything, and it's not a matter of handing out tenders to his children or to people he knew, but it was about you being able to do what you can, and a free and fair sort of opportunity and chance. And therefore we'll be interacting with a lot of other dignitaries and politicians and other leaders who will be walking in here to pay their last respects. Over to you, Getoko.
All right, thank you so much, Raquel Mugai there speaking to us from Parliament. And at this time, 5 minutes past 9 o'clock, we want to take a short break. On a return, we continue the conversation with Kyoko here, who is, for this morning, poster child of free primary education, having benefited shortly after President Kibaki came into office and made that promise of free primary education a reality. Stay tuned.